Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 35 of the Masters Muscle Podcast, the only place to be Wednesday nights. Our guest tonight, I'm going to try to make this short and sweet, but he's got a long list of stuff here. He is an IFBB Pro. He's a coach to many, 115 IFBB Client Pro cards, 3,000, that's right, 3,000 NPC class wins, 22 IFBB Pro client wins, and 25 natural pro cards. And I'm sure there's a lot more that he's going to share with us tonight. Vin, what great guy am I talking about?
Fakri. I can't pronounce your last name, so I apologize.
Mubarak.
Mubarak. So Fakri and I go back a very long time. And he and I think we first worked together in 2009 in the New York Pro. And I believe I took seventh with you in that. Now that was right after 2009, I think. I can't remember. Or 2010. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But I know I placed seventh. It was a great experience. And now fast forward going into the Olympia, I wanted to touch base with Fakri again. And I remember the day Juan, the guy I trained with, also a client of mine, we drove up to Bev's to go meet Fakri and to train. And after we got done, we went in the back by the boxing ring and stuff. We started talking. And, I was, didn't know what direction I wanted to go in yet. But something very genuine that Fakri did. He probably knows what I'm talking about. I don't know if you're going to remember. But we started talking about my career and how he looked up to me before he turned pro. And, I think for guys like us, we never think someone's looking up to us, or like we don't realize people are watching, right? And so Fakri got emotional. And he got so emotional that it really touched him so much to help me for my first Olympia after 40 years of being in this, right? So I was like, right then and there, I said, that's the guy for me. And I know he's going to, have it back. So fast forward, we started prep, and overall it was a great year, except I had to compete against Godzillas and giants at that show. But we brought a good package, and this is just the beginning again. We're going to continue for next year. So it's going to be good. So Fakri, I reached out to, he says, hello, Robbie Lopez.
That's my man. That's my guy. You guys are my guys. You Jersey guys. You, Jason Arntz, and Robbie Lopez.
Yeah, and Vinny Q.
Yeah, Vinny too, man.
And Billy Scarnati and my nephew Nick, who just turned pro. And I said, guys, interviewing Fakri tonight. Give me some questions.
Oh my God!
I got a whole list of really good questions. So, the first one I want to start out with is you. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically got the tail end of kind of like a hardcore era.
Yeah.
And it was before social media, and it was when guys, if they had a coach or not, people were learning. Even women were learning a lot on their own. They were learning nutrition. They were learning training. And they were forced to learn on their own from a magazine, from a friend in the gym, whatever. Not influenced by an abundance of different ideas all day long from people who haven't accomplished anything. So my question to you is, when you start coaching someone who started their careers before social media compared to people who are now today, is one more difficult to coach than the other?
Yeah. Well, it's up to the individual, right? So if the individual puts their trust, listen, if you hire a coach, you should put your trust in the coach, right? Especially somebody with experience. But yeah, I could. So my training goes back to, I started training in 1990. I trained with Mike Menza in 91, 92, 93. So I didn't do my first show until 2000. But I consider myself a 90s bodybuilder, right? Because I grew up around that time. I trained. kept going to California every summer, every winter. I trained out there a few years, came back to New York, trained the rest of the time. The mentality is different. I started coaching in 2007 officially, made it into a business. But yeah, I mean, the mentality of where the client, what it is, man, is just there's so much stuff going on social media, man. And then they ask questions like, well, this influencer says this influencer says that. I'm like, who cares? Like, who cares what they're saying, right? Like, what you said to yourself, Vinny, like, what have they achieved? So a lot of times, like, you're going back and forth with clients, and they're talking about peptides now, and they're talking about all this crazy shit, man. And I'm like, listen, Hadi's not taking that. Derek is not taking that. Samson's not taking that. Vinny Galenti didn't take that. I didn't take that. So yeah, I mean, that's the big thing nowadays to deal with social media is with other people here. And then they want to implement everything, right? They want to implement A to Z. You can't do A to Z because A to Z is going to kill you, right? So it's like you have to decide what's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Wait, so when you talk, like you just mentioned, that this person's not really taking that much, do people believe you? Because everybody always says, oh, no, it's impossible that this person's only using, 500 milligrams of this and 200 milligrams of that. Nobody seems to believe that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Me and Vinny started working this year, and we bumped it up a little bit more. And Vinny's been competing since the 80s, man. So that tells you, Vinny's a legend in bodybuilding, and if he became a legend doing what he did, the small amount of dosages that he did, that should tell you something. Myself, my biggest was 286 pounds. I'm 5'5", and not 286 like one day. I carried that weight for like a year.
Wow.
270 for a long time, 260 for a long time, and forever 250. After the New York Pro 2009 up to 2017, I was 250 every single day I woke up and over. No, people don't believe it. People just, again, because it's social media, you're hearing these guys talking about trend. Every conversation is about trend nowadays, right? Trend, Anavar, and then you have these guys bullshitting, man. You have these guys talking about, yeah, I'm doing TRT. You're not doing TRT because I know what you look like when you were on your highest cycle, and you're just like a little bit smaller now. So you're not on TRT. Stop lying. That's a difficult thing. I don't understand why people lie, right?
Well, also too, I think we're living in a world where got 22-year-old guys will say, I'm on TRT. Like, you're 22 years old. You should be completely off. You don't need TRT. A 56-year-old guy, they don't understand. And it's just another excuse just to stay on steroids longer. And
they're going to be shut down by that time, 25, 30 years old. The LHH, FSH levels are going to be 0. The test levels are going to be below 100. They're not going to, but they don't learn. Like, they're going to learn the hard way. They're going to learn the hard way.
Faku, what got you into the sport? What got you into lifting to start you off?
So I was always an athlete. I've been an athlete since I was 5 years old, playing baseball, football. I played baseball with guys in the major leagues. And eventually, the talent level starts separating itself, right, at some place. I was really good, all-star teams every year, youth service, Goya League. I ran track, Penn relays, second. Penn relays is like the Olympics of high school. I got second in the sprint medley league, 200-meter dash, 22.9 my freshman year. So I was always an athlete, but I was also a knucklehead, right? So I grew up in a very tough neighborhood. I grew up just tough overall because of, my dad leaving my mom's, my mother being a single mother working, me living with 7 aunts in a 1-bedroom apartment. So it was like my mind was always in school, sports, and then, and other things. So got distracted, and at 16 years old, I started like at 15 years old. I bought a Weeder bench. Remember the Weeder bench with the posters, Vince, with the everybody had their own poster, Mike Christensen, Rich Gaspar, and everything. So I put that all over my room, and I started training, and that's it. I fell in love with it. At 16, that was my getaway. Going out to California was my getaway when I was 18, 19, 20 years old to get away from New York. And it's just something that I love, and I just love it, man. It's a passion, and it's a true love of mine.
Did you also have a formal education through books on nutrition and training?
I've read everything. I have read everything. I remember the way I hooked up with Mike was I bought the cassettes that he had, you know, and I listened to the cassettes and I called him. And he hung up on me like 3 times, I think. You know, eventually I got him to train me for a very large amount of money per hour that people don't even charge now. And then we became friends. But yeah, I mean, I read everything. I read everything that we had at that time. I read every single little thing. As far as like being a dietitian or nutritionist, school wise, no. I have a bunch of certifications. But yeah, I mean, my bachelor's is in criminal justice, and I have 2 masters in psychology.
Nice. So saying that, me saying earlier that you got the tail end of old school was an understatement, since you trained with Mike Menser. So I have a question. When you learned with him, was it a true, like, okay, 3 or 4 warm-up sets and 1 working set?
Yeah, so that's where, you know, and it's crazy because, you know, we're talking about social media now. You hear things that Mike said now, and people are taking it to the extreme. Well, Mike said to work out every 2, 3, 4, 5 days. You know, do 1 body part every, or just hit a workout every 4 or 5 days. It wasn't like that. You know, I came to him pretty strong. I was natural to 26, by the way. You know, so when I started training with him, my first year, it was 1991, so I was turning 18. Oh, I just turned 18 because it was the winter of 1991, and I was powerlifting at ADFPA, Powerlifting Natural Federation, and so I went over there. You know, I was pretty strong. So Mike was like, "Well, we need 2 or 3 sets to warm up." You know, he went over the whole entire thing. I'm like, "Mike, I'm squatting 600 pounds. Like, I can't only do 2 or 3 warm up sets. Like, I have to warm up with every single plate." So the whole thing with Mike adjusted his method according to how strong a person was. Like Ray, his brother Ray. Ray was incredibly strong. Ray was an animal. Ray was actually bigger than Mike. The physique Mike possessed in, you know, in 1980 Olympia. But so progressive overload is warming up. So the way I explain it to people is you don't work out until you actually work out. So you don't tire yourself and do the workout before you do the last final set. Because what's the most important set? Is it a 3rd set or is it a 4th set that you go into absolute failure? And absolute failure being, you know, 8 minimum reps up to 12 reps. So that was the whole theory. I've been training progressive overload pretty much my whole entire life, 34 years. No injuries, no knee problems, elbow problems, shoulder problems, no injuries whatsoever.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
So staying in that direction a little bit, before the classic division was ever invented, if you want to call it that, you know, guys that look like a Frank Zane opposed to a guy that looked like Franco Columbu, 2 different spectrums. And now today we have the classic division with height and weight. And a lot of guys get into classic, I think, misunderstanding what classic is. 100%. You want to give your take on that? And how do you think, like I see guys gravitating more towards isolation movements because I want to be a classic competitor, and they eliminate the squat, bench, and deadlift because they don't want to be bulky or anything. But I try to tell these guys, I was a classic guy before the word classic ever came out, and I had a very small waist, and I still do for my age. And I have my quads sweep, and I have wide lats. Deadlifting has no bearing on making my waist bigger. It's a fallacy. So what is your take on that, on different training styles? Should guys just train and not worry about a division?
So the first thing is, look at Chris Bumstead. He's strong. He lifts heavy, right? And he's Mr. He's the world champion, Mr. I mean, there's only one Mr. Olympia, which is bodybuilding. But he's the, you know, the classic Olympia winner. So classic, and Vinny, you agree with this. Classic physiques have always existed. Men's physiques have always existed, right? There was always guys in our gyms that looked good. You know, there was always guys in our gyms that trained, and even if they trained hard, they just didn't have the genetics to grow, to become bodybuilders. When we were competing, there was no divisions for them, so they would go in there. You know, they would get they wouldn't place well. They'll probably place well at regional shows, but once you got to the national level, the mass monsters will win. And I said something earlier about me playing sports. At one point, it was like, all right, and I can tell you exactly. I went to a baseball tournament in Texas, and there was a young kid. He was 16 years old. He was throwing like 94 miles an hour. I went 0 for 5, 4 strikeouts. And then the other bat, he struck me in the head, by the way. So yeah, like 90 mile an hour pitch. So 3 guys on my team, they blasted him. We beat the team. It was like 13-1 or something like that. It was that day that I was like, wow. All right, so now the talent level is going a different way. And bodybuilding is the same thing. Unfortunately, what people don't understand is that, God blesses some people with better genetics than others, right? And what they think is, well, if I take more of something, I'm gonna look a certain way, and it doesn't work that way, right? So if Vinny's drinking this much water, then I need to drink this much water. I need to drink like a 12-pack of water, right? I'm giving an example of PEDs compared to water. People need to maximize the physiques. So I have physique guys and I have classic physique guys that I tell you need to train harder. You need to train more intensely. You need to train heavier. Well, I'm not a bodybuilder. Well, you still have to develop a certain mass, right? You still have to develop the upper chest. Even for men's physique, you need to have wider shoulders. So to develop wider shoulders, right? More of a shoulder gap. What's more important, a shoulder press or a side lateral cable machine? The shoulder press, right? Because it develops the whole overall shoulder. So if you maximize your muscle structure with a certain amount of weight or just progressive overload, your muscles genetically wise are going to shape themselves the way they're supposed to be shaped. So your waist, if you have a small waist, it's going to stay small unless you abuse it with a bunch of food, abuse it with a bunch of insulin, pushing sugars in there, taking drugs that increase progesterone levels, prolactin levels, stuff like that. It makes the stomach wider, it makes the stomach bigger. But yeah, they need to train harder. I mean, everybody should maximize the way they're training because you're not going to maximize your physique. So the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to maximize your physique. Then you have to cut back a little bit, right? That's the worst thing that's going to happen. The other side of it is not maximizing your physique and chasing what you should be chasing. And you're going to be creating more exercises. Bench pressing on the floor, squatting on your head. Doing all this crazy stuff people do, right? It's insane, but it's the truth, though. Everybody should be maximizing their physique because the worst thing that could happen is, well, now I could cut back a little bit.
What I find, to play off that a little bit, I see a lot of men's physique competitors always making excuses to not train legs hard because they wear the board shorts, and it frustrates me as a competitor who's been in it a long time to try to tell these guys, we believed that the squat was the king of all exercises, right? And it enhanced everything. And I don't want to get a big ass or anything like that. I go, well, listen, I've never had a big ass, right? And I'm Italian. I don't have a big ass. So, but the squat enables guys to have big, thick backs. It helps their arms grow. And you look at Jeremy Buenda, coming back this year after how many years? 8 years? 7 years?
Ryan Terry won this year because of his leg, right?
He take 8th place. He looked amazing. But Jeremy has a set of wheels. Yeah. And I saw videos on him, and I was like, oh, is this guy going in classic? Yeah. And he can be classic if he wanted to. I just think that guys are misconstrued with their knowledge, information on how they should train for their category. And really at the bottom line, the end of the day is everybody's a bodybuilder. Yeah. And to get back to your point, maximize on their potential.
100%. 100%. And the reason why Terry won this year is because, they increased the size of the shorts, right? The shorts had to be above the knee now. If you look at the top three there, did Terry really have the best physique on that stage? I don't personally think so, upper body wise, but he had the most complete physique, especially, meeting the criteria that they talked about, that you need to show some legs. And Terry showed the most legs, and he's a really good competitor. one of the best in the world for like the last few years. But this year he actually won it. I think he was showing more legs.
Fakri, when you look at your overall clientele, is there a certain training program that you're seeing more prevalent, whether it's high reps, low reps, more compound movements? Is there a certain style that you're seeing more, or you're prescribing more?
I'm progressive overload, man. Progressive overload, heavy duty. If you could do compound movements, do the compound movements. If you can't, you hear these guys nowadays. They're 25 years old. I got bad knees and I have a bad back. Bullshit. Like what have you ever done to have a bad knees and bad back? Have you ever played sports? No. Have you ever squatted 700 pounds? No. Bench press, whatever, but deadlift? No. I think for me, again, it's progressive overload, right? Even my bikini competitors, my wellness competitors, I have programs that these wellness girls go hard, man. Have you ever seen these wellness girls train?
Yep.
They're intense.
I think the girls train harder than most guys today.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? Wow.
I think so.
I disagree with you, Vinny. I can't disagree with you.
Yeah, I see like a lot of guys looking for excuses to ski out on a lot of types of training, which is the compound, the basic movements, focusing on cable movements more. And I get my balls broke from guys in the gym because I'll post up like on Instagram, like to build the house, you got to use the squat, bench, and deadlift. And when you decorate the house, you use cables. So then when I use cable, they're like, oh, you're decorating the house, you got to build it. I'm like, I got 40 years of building the house. I build and I decorate. I build and I decorate.
Right.
I go, but you guys never build anything.
Right. But when you were a teenager, 20s, 30s, and 40s, you were doing the compound movements, right? Because that's how you build your physique.
Shit, I was squatting. I didn't squat like you did. 500 pounds was extremely heavy for me. So I knew my threshold was 405, and I would do sets of 20 with 405.
Right.
But it's a different. We were doing it for the right reasons, and I'm not saying there's guys today that are not doing it, or competitors, women too, are not doing it for the right reasons. But a large portion of competitors today are doing it just for social media, and it's they're not real competitors to me.
Well, you see it though, right? Because you see guys. How many thousands of people have me and you seen come and go? Thousands, right? I tell people I've been around 4 generations. I've been around your grandfather, I've been around your father, I've been around your older brother, you, and I'm gonna be here after you, right? And Vinny's gonna be right there with me. But you see guys that they start training and they try to become Instagram celebrities and stuff like that, or they do a couple of shows and they don't do well and they quit, they stop, right? And then they'll ask me if they see me somewhere, oh, you're still doing that little bodybuilding thing? I'm like, yeah, because I love it. It's what I do. You never loved it. That's why you quit. And I would go as far as saying even some top pros that were top pros really didn't love the sport, right? They started training. They were good at the sport. They were good genetically. They grew. Their body worked well. It just they had the genetics to do it, and they became professional bodybuilders. And now they don't do anything. They don't train. They don't work out. They don't even look like they even lifted a weight. And I think that's not love. I mean, love is something. Love is a forever thing, right? If you love something, you do it forever because it's in your heart.
That's it. One of our mutual friends, Bill Scarnetti's asking, because I have comments here on the side here, what bodybuilder did Fakri admire, or bodybuilders did you admire when you were coming up in the sport?
So Dorian was my guy. So let me tell you a quick story, which Vinny's probably going to be embarrassed, right? Vinny was like, Vinny knows what I'm about to say too.
I don't know.
So Vinny was a guy who I saw like in the 80s on TV, ESPN, MSG. I would go to the Jersey gym to like see Vinny and Rob Lopez and Jason Arndt, like, because at first these were my local heroes. And then Long Island, Jersey, Scalise and stuff like that. So I remember competing against Vinny in 2003 Nationals, and I'm standing online about to go on stage, and I turn around, I'm like, oh shit, you're Vinny Galenti. You remember that? So yeah. Vinny looks at me and goes, yeah, man, you look good. Just calm down. Right. So then right behind him was George Betancourt. I'm like, and you're George Betancourt, right? So like it wasn't I was starstruck, but I was, I was on stage with the guys that I actually watched throughout my years. So my guy was Dorian Yates, because again, he was also a Mike Menzer disciple, and I remember seeing Dorian train. Those black and white pictures were something I was like, oh shit, everybody needs to step up the game after the black and white pictures. Yeah, Dorian, my God.
George Betancourt, that's a name I haven't heard. And living in Miami for a while, I think he burned out too quick, too hard, I think.
Yeah, he started young. He was competing. Yeah, he started really young.
Yeah, wow.
In that 2003 show, how did you place?
I placed 4th. So they only called out 3 people in the first call out. It was Chris Drim, which I think at that time was, if you guys even think about this, that was his 12th, 13 national qualifier. So that's how hard it was to turn pro back then.
Yeah.
So Chris Drim won, Rock Shabazz was 2nd, and Curtis Bryan was 3rd. So they called those 3 guys out only in the first call out. And in the second call out, I was called, put in the center, and I finished 4th. And that was actually my 3rd show ever.
3rd show.
Nationals, yeah.
So right before that, 3 years in a row, I placed 3rd 3 years in a row.
The Nationals.
In the Nationals. Come to the 2003 Nationals, and I'm in the last call out, and that's never happened to me before. And I was in shape. And I remember the next morning I'm at the buffet, and some of the judges were there and like, you competed? I'm like, yeah, I competed. You missed me. I didn't even know you were in the show. And I thought, how fucked up is that? Overlooked, completely overlooked.
That show was stacked, though.
It was stacked, yeah.
That was 2003 was a stacked lineup, man. I remember I was another thing I remember being online was Chris Dim was actually in front of me, and I'm looking at him from the back, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, is this guy really a light heavyweight? So I turned around, Chris has those fucking gigantic arms, and I turned around and just stared at his arms, and he's looking at me. I'm staring at his arms. I'm like, God damn, how do I get arms like that? So. Bodybuilding has always. I'm not a cult bodybuilder. I don't. And Vinny knows this, right? Like, I don't dress like a bodybuilder. I don't act like a bodybuilder. I've never. I hang out with. I have friends in bodybuilding, but I'm not a cult follower. I'm not somebody that. Again, like, I'm not just like a cult follower. Basically, I'm gonna say, but bodybuilding is something that is always amazed me and intrigued me of how somebody could take their body and look a certain way. Did you guys see the Colombian guy that competed this past weekend?
In Romania or which show?
He did. I think he did Prague, right? Was it Prague this past weekend?
So the guy freaking nasty.
Yo, he's a monster. He's a freaking like incredible. So a couple of friends of mine that are Colombian, they text me this picture like, how do I get that big? I said, I don't know. I've never been that big myself,
So what do they call him? Neckzilla?
That amazes me.
That's a Neckzilla?
Neckzilla.
Yeah, that guy's crazy.
He literally looks like a cartoon character that came to life.
That's what I told everybody. Yeah, he looks like a cartoon character.
It's crazy. So let's switch gears a little bit. When I was a teenager, teen competitors were in abundance. And I would go, I remember I met Robbie Lopez and, when we were teenagers and competing in the 87 team jersey. Wow. I took 4th. Robbie won it, or maybe the year before he won it. But we were in it both years, and there had to be anywhere between 15 and 20 teenagers in each class. So you're talking maybe 50 to 60 teenagers in a show. And the Masters division was kind of considered cute. Oh, that's nice. These older guys, that's okay. That's nice. And maybe you had 3 guys. Now, fast forward, there's maybe 1 teenager in a show.
Yeah.
And now we have like anywhere between 20 and 30 Masters guys in a show. Do you think, because now I've experienced it for myself, the protocol from A to Z, from nutrition to training, supplementation, like I've had to change everything because I've been training 40 years. So when you train a guy who is just either new to the sport and worked out his whole life but never really pushed his body, the way we have, or if you have somebody who's been pushing for 40 years like me, and we've done it, we've trained. Do you come up to, okay, I have to have a different approach for this competitor?
Yeah, of course. I mean, somebody who's been training for a long time, they have some type of muscle maturity, whether they're enhanced or not. You could push them a little bit harder. As far as the enhancement, you would start at the lowest level possible, lowest level that would lead to, lowest bodybuilding level actually. Somebody who's young, and hasn't really trained hard, you have to, it's like, all right, so let's say you can squat 500 to 700 pounds. You always start with the bar. You don't start with a plate on each side. I've squatted a ton of weight. I was pound for pound probably one of the strongest bodybuilders in the world when I was at my peak. But I always went to that bar first, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the whole concept. You have to start at the very beginning and move yourself way up. And that's another reason how I have avoided injuries all my life.
So Fouad, when you talk about taking on clients, do you prefer someone that's new and fresh, like a piece of clay that's moldable, or someone like Vinny that's seasoned and maybe just needs some touch-ups or a little refinement? Do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference. I do very well with amateur clients. Obviously with the amount of pro cards, I think they tend to listen more, and they're a little bit more hungrier. Like Vinny puts his full trust in me, but with Vinny is different, right? Like it's not like, I don't even consider myself like Vinny's coach, right? It's like this is team Vinny, right? He's the head of the team, and I'm like his second eye. So when you coach people with more experience, and guys, and now I'm gonna get some clients saying, well, I have experience too. No, you don't have experience like Vinny does, right? But guys that have, they've done well at shows, these pros have gone to, pro wins, guys have gone to the Olympia, guys have gone to the Arnold. You have to listen to them. That's the type of feedback you get back and forth, but go back to answer your question. I don't really have a preference. I'm very flexible. I just, all I ask is trust, and then if I promise you something, I promise you something. That's how it's going to be. If I promise, please put your trust in me. We're not going to fail. We're not going to fail. I'm the type of person that, this is going to sound incredibly crazy, but this is like what I say. When I have something in my head, which is always right. My head is like a tornado. It's like a hurricane. I never stop thinking, no matter what I do. So if I'm sitting here talking to you guys and I'm thinking about a bunch of other stuff. If I'm having sex, I'm thinking about some other stuff. If I'm eating, I'm thinking about some other stuff.
I hope your girlfriend or your wife ain't listening to this.
Yeah, well, it's the truth. It's just the truth, right? So my mind never shuts down. So I'm always thinking about something. If somebody's in prep, I'm thinking about their prep. If somebody is, if I'm behind with somebody, I'm thinking about that. So I'm on top of my game 100%. It's something, again, I don't know. I might be Rain Man when it comes to this, but it's something that I love doing.
To your credit, here I am in Romania, 8 hours difference. And I don't think he ever slept.
I can't.
Like I was able to touch Bakri when we needed to talk about what's the next step. Yeah. That's how dedicated he is.
Yeah, it's meal by meal or every 2 meals, no matter where you're at. So sometimes, like for example, last weekend, or two weekends ago, we had the Eastern USA's in New Jersey, so I was over there with 5 clients. I had 1 client competing in India and 2 clients competing in Italy. So just the time difference in itself, and by the time I get to the show, like I'm tired. And people are like, well, coach, you went to sleep last night. I said, no, I went to sleep at 10, but then I had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning because of the time difference. And remember, those guys are a day ahead, So, yeah, I mean, listen, if somebody's paying you money, if somebody's paying you for your services, deliver. Because if not, you're robbing people. And that's not ethical. I'm a very ethical person.
Yeah. Good.
Is one type of athlete, because you do both enhanced, I'll use the word enhanced, being respectful here, versus natural, is one easier to work with than the other?
It depends on genetics. Like you have natural competitors that get ripped. When you're in PEDs and enhanced, you could take supplements. Can we talk about things on here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're open.
Yeah, so some natural competitors will get shredded, right? So then you have other guys that, that they have a slower metabolism. The BMR might not be as fast, again, your T3, T4, TSH levels might be off balance. One will be higher than the other. Like your hormones play a very important part. Your hormones are everything, especially for bodybuilders. But when somebody's enhancing PEDs, well, you know what? We could add 25 micrograms of T3. We could do clen. We could do well, we need more muscle mass. Well, we could bump up the test, bump up the the prima bowling. If it's something that, well, you're already big enough, but we just need to get you fuller. We'll add in we'll add in more primo. Primo increases the protein synthesis at a higher rate than testosterone does, right? So there's certain chemicals that you add in there for specific reasons. It's not just, well, I'm going to do A to Z and we're just going to go all out. But I mean, I would say, of course, enhanced athletes are easier to work with because you could manipulate them a little bit more as opposed to natural competitors. But there's some nasty natural competitors out there. There's guys that you're like, holy shit, you're not natural. But you can tell by the skin. How you tell a natural guy? When he does his quarter turn, the thickness between his back and his chest, most natural guys are not that thick. This past weekend, we had Ben Weider's natural IFBB show, NPC Pro-Am in Pittsburgh. And guys were sending me, some of my clients, some of my friends, this guy's not natural. I'm like, yeah, wait until he turns around. And the minute he turns around, or even a physique guy, whatever, he does the turn that way, you could tell by the thickness if they're natural or not. Because the shape of the muscle comes from body fat, right? So if you have elongated chest, and you have certain calves and you have some and you're shredded, that's going to show from the front. So from the front, you're going to be like, wow, that guy looks fantastic. There's no way he's natural. I had, I never had peaks for my biceps. So there's some natural guys that do have peaks for their biceps. So if you have no body fat, the body fat is going to shrink around, saran wrap around that muscle to show. But when they turn to the side is when you see the difference between a natural competitor and an enhanced competitor.
So to play off that a little bit, my first experience around real bodybuilding was 1984. I was training at Billy's gym in Bayonne, New Jersey. And you had John Natashak training for the Nationals, and you had Chuck.
So now?
No, Chuck Waldron, who was an AAU guy. So at the same time, John's winning the Nationals. Chuck Waldron's winning the AAU, I think World, Universe, all of that. And my first experience hearing about steroids was two schools of thoughts. One came from, do you remember the name Bob Gruskin?
Yeah, of course. I know Bob personally. Yeah.
So Bob's guys focused on total amount of steroids. So if you took 500 milligrams of test and 200 milligrams of primobolan, that's 700 milligrams in total. And the other guys went more on total doses of each one. And I never knew or understood which one would actually work better. That's why I think, like, when we talk about how safe I was, it was more because I was scared to dive into all of that. And, if you look at my physique, I was 154 pounds 40 years ago, right? And 40 years later, I'm 194 pounds competing. And it's not a lot of weight. It's not a lot of muscle you put on over those years. And you see guys today putting that kind of weight on in 2 years. So what's your thought on those two schools of thoughts?
So for people don't know, Bob was Chris Aceto's mentor. He was also Jerry Scalise's trainer, and Bob is probably the first guru of the gurus. I met him once. I had one conversation with him in Toptis Gym in College Point. So my school of thought is each chemical plays a different role in the body. Test is king, they say, and when it comes to PEDs. But like I said earlier, primobolan increases the protein synthesis at a higher nitrogen rate than testosterone does. So, for example, if you take 1,000 milligrams of test and 1,000 milligrams of primo is going to be more effective as far as putting on the muscle. Test is going to put more size on overall, but primo is going to put on more muscle. But the problem with taking that much primo is primo also has a filtration rate a lot faster in the kidneys, because since you're synthesizing more protein at a higher nitrogen retention rate, the filtration rate through your kidneys is more advanced. So Primo at a higher dosage is going to cause more kidney damage, right? So you keep Primo at 400 or 500, 300 to 400 or 500, depending. Masteron, of course, gets you harder. Proviron is the oral form of Masteron, but Masteron has a more of an anabolic kick to it, not just androgenic, but more anabolic, not just DHT based. Yeah, I mean, every hormone is different. You just can't say, well, I'm on 600 milligrams of PDs. Well, which ones? 600 total. It wouldn't work that way, because everything you do, especially when you're doing a contest prep or even trying to gain muscle mass, lean muscle mass, everything plays a different role in it.
We have a question here. What are your thoughts on Vince Gironda's training philosophies? I know who he is. I'm not too familiar with training though.
I'm not sure who he is.
Vince Gironda?
Yeah.
Is that the guy who trains every day?
No, he passed away like a long time ago. He was Muhammad Makawi's trainer.
Well, Muhammad Makawi is a freaking beast. I can't say nothing about that right now.
You're gonna go, Sean? You got a
No,
question?
go ahead.
No, so do you? Well, I know what you did with me. So, and how you organized my prep and everything. So tell everybody out there how you go about your protocol of setting everything up in emails and how everything's organized, because you're one of the most organized people I've ever met.
Thank you. Yeah, so I work from a blank sheet. I don't do Word docs. I don't do what's that called?
Excel?
Yeah, Excel, man. I mean, I do Word docs, right? I don't do Excel. That's just what I meant. So anytime you see an Excel diet, you should be very, very wary of it, because as we know how Excel works, you make a change in one column, it changes everything else, right? It's a mathematic cumulative formula to change things. So, for example, if there's an Excel sheet and somebody wants to lower the calories that week, right? They'll just, they'll change a column, and then it'll automatically change the ounces of either the protein, carbohydrate, or fats, whichever calculation they figure on the side, right? People who are in finance will understand Excel more, because we use it for different things that we do for calculating P&L sheets and stuff, like balance sheets and stuff like that. So anytime I see an Excel sheet, I'm very wary about that. I don't think it's taking a coach 15, 20, 30 minutes to do an update. I might be a little bit OCD, so I read my updates like 5-6 times before I even send them. But yeah, so I start from a blank sheet, and there's, of course, I have some type of format in there, but it starts by asking the client, well, send me an example of what, like Vinny knows, send me an example of what you eat, send me an example of your supplements, send me an example of how you're training, your day is, and everything else. And we'll set it up that way. I'll set up meal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Well, not 10 meals. Nobody 10 meals, right? But depending on how many meals you're eating, post workout, intro workout, vitamins, supplements. I mean, everything's in there. But again, I start from my emails, and my updates are literally, word by word, letter by letter. And I'm so insanely sick that I make sure even the punctuation is correct when I send things.
Cool. So let's switch over to the Olympia. And I've seen lately a lot of people are complaining that the guys went on stage way too late.
Yeah. And
the lighting was bad, etc. I agree with it a little bit that guys should be going on a lot earlier, because our bodies peak at a certain time, and most guys are in bed by 9 o'clock at night when they're training for a show. And here these top athletes are getting on stage at the Olympia at close to, I think, 10 p.m., 11.
Yeah.
Do you think that played a big role in a lot of the guys looking a little softer?
Yeah, it can be just for the reasons that you just spoke of. I know Chris Aceto was, he spoke about it, and Milo spoke about it. I mean, us as bodybuilders with experience, everybody who I mentioned, we understand that the body does peak earlier. just because we're not awake at that time, right? So, but at that time, our melatonin levels, we have other hormones that are not forming in our body, our sleep hormones, right? One of them being our melatonin levels starts taking effect in our bodies at a certain time. So all that, 100%. I 100% agree with that. The thing with that is, if you put the men first, that's it. People are going to be gone, right? So they need to keep the stadium full. So it does come out to a business financial situation when you're speaking about that.
100%. But what about if the prejudging for the men were the first, and then the finals could be midnight for them? It's and not go about, all right, we're rejudging this, because it's just unfair.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll fix it. They're smart people, and they're businessmen, so I'm sure they're going to figure it out to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
And I think next year the Olympia is now going to be in Las Vegas, back to Vegas.
Go world.
That's cool. Yeah. So what's next for you? What's on the horizon for you? Are you already planning for competitors for 24? Do you already?
Yeah, so this time of the year is usually a slow time of the year. During I think by the beginning of November, most of the shows are done. Unless you have guys at nationals. I have a couple guys competing at the Masters USAs in December. But this is a slow time of the year. So this is usually the time of the year I start doing other things that I haven't been able to do the whole entire year.
Yeah.
Exclusive, even talking to my family members. But by the end of December, beginning of January, we're ready to go. I'm coming out with another supplement company. I actually got the black book is here today. I don't want to say the name of the company yet. Yeah, but but it's gonna be this is gonna be my third supplement company, and I'm pretty excited about it. The first two did very well. The first one got to GNC within 6 months, and then the second one, Factrition, we did very well. But I had to come back to New York and take care of my other businesses, so I had to pretty much end that. But we were distributed in 11 countries, a bunch of stuff. But I'm looking forward to that, and just clients, man, just competing, just coaching, man. That's what I do. So basically, what I do all day is I coach and I trade. I trade options. That's my whole entire day.
So I know you're saying you can't tell us anything about the product line. Can you say how many products you're going to have?
6.
6 products.
Yeah, we're launching. We're launching.
All right, cool.
Launching.
And how can the viewers get in touch with you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so I'm on. I don't have a website. I had one and I let it go a couple of years ago. But Instagram, Facebook. I'm thinking about putting up a website again. And but basically most of it is Instagram and Facebook, and that's how most people get in touch with me.
What's your name on Instagram?
Instagram is Factory Move Rack Forever IFBB Pro.
All right, cool, nice.
Yeah. So, Fouad, before we wind down, Vin, if I could ask one more question here.
Yeah.
Everybody's a coach nowadays.
Sure.
Whether you compete, I mean, let's be honest, and not to disrespect you here. What should people look for when they're looking for a coach? What advice would you give, whether it's you or someone that's looking for a coach?
I think experience. Experience is the main thing, and experience doesn't mean win one show and become a coach. Experience doesn't mean, well, damn, this guy has really good genetics. Let me follow what he's doing, right? It's also when you start working with somebody, you understand if they're gonna pay attention to you or not within the first week or so. If somebody's not very detailed with you, if somebody doesn't give you a detailed plan, they don't get back to you right away. Vinny, he'll text me if I'm awake, I'm answering. It's 24 hours a day. If I don't sleep much, so I'm answering the phone most of the time. But I just think experience and a resume. It's hard to build a resume as successful as some of the top coaches in the world, because if you really look at the top coaches in the world, since and you guys will probably agree with that, the top coaches in the world in 2000 are still the top coaches in the world, right? You still have Hani, you still have George, which doesn't coach anymore, but George, Chad, Chris Aceto, Milos, Neil Hill. You know, so those guys are still on top, and they're on top for a reason, right? I'm like the last face of Mount Rushmore, by the way, so I have to put myself up there. You know? I'm humble, man, but I'm also very competitive. But I think experience with resume is the most important thing as far as coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. Anything else, Vin?
No, man. I'm like I said, man. Whatever you guys want to talk about, I'm here. If I appreciate very much being on the podcast, and
we thank you so much for coming. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. And next week, folks, on next Wednesday, we have Scott Applebaum, IFBB Pro, who just scored 4 pro cards. I think at the Nationals. I think Universe. Yeah. As always, folks, thank you so much for tuning into Masters Muscle. Have a great rest of the week and happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good night, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Fakri.